Are spring games soon to be a thing of the past? This is a hot topic going around college football right now. Will spring games end up being just another casualty of the new college football as we begin to know it? That's a great question. Me and Jordan are going to get into it tonight. Jordan, this really started catching fire when Matt Rule, Nebraska head coach, came out with some comments this past weekend when he had his annual offseason press conference to kind of kick off spring and all that kind of stuff. He was asked by a reporter, could he guarantee that there would be a spring game played for Nebraska this season? And basically, in not so many words, he said no. He cannot confirm that there will be a spring game. And he explained his reasoning. And apparently, he's not the only college football coach to feel this way. He's not the only. Nebraska won't be the only team doing this. We saw last year Ole Miss do a Pro Bowl style spring game, if you will, where they were playing tug of war and the dunk contest and all sorts of craziness on the field, anything but resembling real football as we know it as college football fans. But mainly the culprits of this, of potentially college football fans no longer seeing spring games as we know them currently, is NIL, tampering, and the portal. And when you really look back at college football right now and the struggle that many coaches go through at the end of every season and at the end of every spring with trying to retain their rosters, it does kind of make sense. So, Jordan, what's your take on this? Will spring games soon become a thing of the past as we know them as college football fans?
I mean, potentially. I mean, it's a very complex issue. I mean, you mentioned it, with the visibility that it puts on, your entire roster. It makes sense that other teams are using it as opportunities to get eyeballs on players that might not necessarily be high up on the depth chart, but you could see, coming to your program and contributing. It's the utility of the spring game from a program standpoint is not really, like, in terms of developing your players, like that's kind of the culmination of everything that you've done throughout the spring. So it's not necessarily like it's one more scrimmage, but a lot of it, most teams treat it as an opportunity to, play a lot of guys and just kind of have fun, and kind of celebrate, the conclusion of the spring practice. So it's great for the fans and it's great for the players. But as far as like a program management, roster management standpoint, it basically just puts your program under a microscope for all the other programs in college football to see. So I mean, I get the frustrations. I'm not sure if it'll completely go away, because the one thing that it does bring in that in the spring period is it's a great recruiting tool. I mean, you see basically every program host kids on those days,
Yeah.
and bring it. It's a great opportunity to get kids on campus to see the program, watch your players in action without taking them to a private scrimmage or practice. And so I think you'll see some coaches go away from it. I'm not sure if we're going to lose it completely, but it is a very Matt Rule's comments made sense, especially since Nebraska is a program that, hey, like, they are not on the higher end of. I mean, they have a really good NIL budget, but they're not on the higher end as far as their roster is concerned. So they're still very good enough that they have a lot of players that can play at other Power 5 schools, lower G5 schools, and things of that sort. So, it kind of puts them in an interesting, kind of position where they have to, really, really fight to hold on to players, because they're, they don't necessarily just have, tons of 5-star, 4 and 5-star talent that you say, okay, we're going to let this kid leave, and we'll probably be fine at that position. Like, they have some really good players, but it's not they don't have a robust roster And especially with them being in the Big Ten and the caliber of teams they're having to compete with, that's going to be a concern for a lot of those teams. And even for the bigger programs, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Alabamas of the world, like they still have to, when they do those spring games, they have to make sure that they're retaining and holding on to their players as well, because they're going to have 4 and 5 star kids that are lower in the depth chart playing in those games that the other teams are going to get eyeballs on and say, okay, well, let's see if we can get him to enter the portal. So it is a thing I think you're going to see some coaches move away from. But I do think some of the positives is in regards to recruiting, and also just the spotlight on your program it brings in a time when there's no football on. I think those things are also valuable. So it'll probably be, a case-by-case basis depending on the coach and what they value and kind of their feel on where their roster is and their ability to retain their players.
Yeah, I kind of view this in the lens of once it starts happening, it's probably going to grow. You think back to, I don't know if anyone can remember this anymore, but there was once upon a time when everyone played in bowl games. And we're not going to rehash all that kind of nonsense, but, one person sits out, then another person sits out, and it kind of spreads like wildfire in that way. I kind of view this through the same lens. I think for the most part, spring games are probably slowly going to change from the products that we currently know them as actual football games. I think there'll still be, I don't think any university is going to go away from having an event, but I don't know that it'll be an actual football game as we currently know spring games. And for college football fans, diehard college football fans like yourself and like me and you, it's unfortunate, man. It's another piece of college football that's being ripped away from us because of the changing landscape of college football. And I'm not saying all change is bad, and the world, the sky is falling, and college football is going to be terrible. I'm not saying any of that stuff, but just from my perspective, a college football fan that has grown up watching college football since the time that I knew what it was. It's just another unfortunate casualty of the new era in college football that we're at. And with that said, I completely understand what a coach like Matt Rule's saying. Like, I get it. I get that last year Nebraska's spring game was probably the most televised spring game ever, with 60,000 people there and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was a big thing, right? But then they lose a couple key players directly tied to performances in that spring game. And you start to understand what these coaches are going through. It's a full calendar of nonstop recruiting for college coaches now. Not only are you recruiting high school talent, but you're recruiting your roster all the time. And especially with these teams that have, some 4 stars, some 5 stars that aren't going to start immediately, and they get out there in a spring game and they show a couple things, and then so-and-so university comes knocking on the door offering how much ever money, you could lose players like that. So I get it. It's like Matt Rule said, tampering is not a thing in college football. It's just an open and free market. You just come talk to players anytime you want, and you try to pull them away via their agents or whatever and offer them money, and there's just no regulation. There's no guardrails to it. It's really the wild, wild west in college football. And unfortunately, spring games could become one of those things that we ultimately lose, at least the actual games. So we'll see. I know Ole Miss kind of did something similar to a football field day, if you will, last year. I don't know what that was. I guess it was entertaining, but I like how Clemson runs it, right? I like that Dabo Sweeney splits the coaching staff like it's a real game, splits the roster as evenly as they can, like it's a real game, and they kind of go try to play football against each other. I like that. Will that become a thing of the past? I hope not, but I could certainly see a world where they do. I know UCF has said that they will not be doing a traditional spring game this year either. So more and more schools are coming out in support of what Matt Rule said and following suit with similar things. So we'll see how many schools do it this year, and if I had to guess, it'll probably grow year by year as we go.